Victims of crime suffer emotionally, physically, and financially from the acts committed against them. The effects and impact of the victimization are as varied as is the crime for each individual victim. Over the next few minutes, you will hear the stories of 4 different people who were traumatized by 4 different types of criminal acts right here in Cobb County.
Sexual assault is about power and control that someone has over another person. It is the most personal crime there is and can happen to women and men alike. Every 2.5 minutes, someone in the United States is sexually assaulted. 1 in 6 women and 1 in 33 men will be sexually assaulted in their lifetime. 80% of sexual assault victims know their attacker. It isn't the stranger in the bushes you have always been warned about, but rather a person you may trust, which takes a victim 3 to 4 times longer to get over the assault when it is someone that they know.
My daughter was the victim of rape, and when you receive that telephone call from the emergency room at 5 o'clock in the morning, your life changes in ways that you will never know. You go through all of those things that you tried to do as a parent to provide a safe environment, live in a good community, make sure that they only associate with the right people. And when you've done all of that, you think you're safe. Then the call comes, and you show up at the hospital, and the first thing you realize is that you're very happy that your daughter is alive, because that's not always the case. In sexual assault and rape, one of the things you find out, unfortunately, is about 80% of those rapes are committed by people who know their victims. So these are people you know or you trust, or at least you don't trust, you don't fear, and all of that happens. And there are no answers. There's no preparation. There's no preparation for an event like this, because we do everything we can our entire lives to avoid these types of events. It's truly a journey. It forces you to look at reality. It forces you to address reality, and then it forces you to find out, okay, this is the situation we have. How do we move through it? And that's one of the things that keeps you going, because if they can walk through it, and they've been involved in the issue, the least you can do is to try to be there for them.
It is tragic when families pay the ultimate cost of crime, losing a loved one. Murder is when one person causes the death of another human being, whether intentionally with malice aforethought or during the commission of a felony. Voluntary manslaughter occurs when one person causes the death of another as a result of a sudden, violent, or irresistible passion. Most recent national statistics tell us that 37% of homicide victims were killed by an acquaintance, 22% were killed by a stranger, 18% were killed by an intimate partner, husband, wife, boyfriend, or girlfriend, 15% were killed by a family member, and 5% were killed by a friend.
When the detective came to tell me that day that my daughter was dead, I thought I would die. It was like my whole world stopped. How do you go on? How do you pick up the pieces? For a whole week after she was murdered on Monday, it was about trying to arrange a funeral and get through that nightmare week. And on Friday, we buried her. The hardest thing that I've ever had to do in my life was put my 21-year-old daughter in the ground. From that day forward, my life has never been the same. I often think it's like I've lived 2 lives, one with Lori and one without Lori. How could this happen to us? But crime doesn't care who you are. It doesn't care how rich you are, how poor you are, where you live or where you don't live. It never ends. It never ends. You can't go back home and try to put everything back, all the puzzle pieces back together, because there's a big piece missing. How do you go on? How do you live your life without your child? Wayne and I, we made it one day at a time, one step at a time, by the grace of God.
Burglary is more than just a property crime. It is an invasion of someone's personal space and property. A person commits the offense of burglary when, without authority and with the intent to commit a felony or theft therein, enters or remains within the dwelling or house of another. It is estimated that the total economic loss to victims due to property crimes is $16.21 billion a year.
Since it happened is I rarely leave my house unattended because I don't want to. And I went sometimes 2 or 3 days at a time and not leaving because I just didn't want to leave the house unattended. So at first I was angry and frustrated and felt victimized, but I was determined, that I was going to, carry on and get my stuff back and stuff. So I started traveling to all the pawn shops around the neighborhood and to see if I could recover my stolen items. I have just been trying to get back to some kind of normalcy. It had changed my life, for a while, and that's where, like I said, the determination came in to say, hey, I can't do this anymore. I gotta at least go ahead and try to live my life, and but I'm happy now.
Every 15 seconds in the United States, someone is mentally or physically abused by their spouse or intimate partner. Domestic violence is a leading cause of death in pregnant women. Domestic violence costs approximately $5.4 billion each year in health care, mental health costs, lost days of work, and productivity. Young boys who witness domestic violence as a child are 50% more likely to become abusers themselves. Stalking is often related to domestic violence. 81% of stalking victims who were stalked by an intimate partner reported they had also been physically assaulted by that partner. Stalking is a series of actions making you feel afraid or in danger. It can often escalate over time. It can be by someone you know or a stranger. Women are nearly 3 times more likely to experience stalking than males. 3.4 million people are stalked annually in the United States.
I'm a victim of domestic violence. Was in that relationship for 8 years, and my family had no idea. It was a hidden thing that happened behind closed doors and that was well covered up. Not only was it physical abuse, there was emotional, verbal, there was multiple kinds of abuses. So over the years, it obviously continued to take my self-esteem away. He would belittle me, tell me nobody would want me. The abuse got worse, the beatings got worse. So there were some days where I wouldn't go to work there because the bruise would be too bad. But most of the time it was hidden on the head, scalp area where you couldn't see it, or places where your clothes covered it up. So we would miss work some days. There was, multiple days where, it was just, you'd go to work, but it was tough. Why would you put up with that? You're so strong, because I've always had such a strong personality that she just had no idea that I would ever put up with that. But when you're at that place, it's a different place. When you're behind closed doors, it's a different thing. It's a comfort zone that I didn't feel like I could get out of. But now she looks back and says, okay, well, unfortunately you went through, but you lived through it, so, we have to make the best of it. But the sad part is there's a lot of people that don't make it. I would say you get out and you tell somebody that no one's going to think bad of you, because that was my biggest concern, is people are going to think that I'm, an idiot, that I put up with that. But it was the total opposite reaction. The support system of your friends and true friends and family really come out if you are in that environment and that is happening. Just one time. One time is violence, domestic violence. I mean, one hit, one slap, verbal, it is still domestic violence. And if it happens once, it's probably going to happen again, because that's what I kept telling myself is, well, it's only happened once. Oh, it's only happened twice. Third time, fourth time, and it just becomes a pattern.
So how can you help? You can vote.
Each and every elected official, from city government to county officials, to state legislation, to Congress, to the President of the United States, has the ability to influence policies, decisions, workforce, and services to victims of crime.
You can also give. You can give of your time, give of your money, and give of your resources to service programs that assist crime victims.
You can be aware, available, willing, advocate, ready, empowered, and educated. One way to educate yourself is to know what resources are available, such as those you see on your screen now.
You can be intolerant of crime, sending a message to criminals that our community will not tolerate criminal activity, and that when such crimes do occur, we will hold these offenders accountable, and we will provide victims of these crimes with the necessary services to foster both their physical and their emotional healing.
It is our hope that through these victim impact stories and the information shared throughout this video, that you have become more aware of the plight of crime victims and how you can help when someone you know is victimized by crime.